Welcome back, everybody, to episode 32 of the StricklyNFL podcast. Coming off of a pretty crazy week, not just for the Jets and Giants, but in the NFL in general. As always, got my co-host Dez with me here. How we doing, Dez?
I'm doing fan-fucking-tastic.
That's the best response we've given this entire season.
Yeah, man. That's how it be.
Also joining us today is a very special guest, first time on the pod, part of the Cover One network, covering the Bills, and I'm sure you said much more, right? We have Ant joining us. So
Yeah.
how we doing, Ant?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I cover the Bills, and then just pretty much anything and everything, NFL draft, prospect stuff, scheme, structure, X's and O's, player evaluation. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Well, as we get into this, I have since you brought up prospects, I have some guys not in this class, but guys from last year who I was high on that might want to talk about a little going forward.
Ooh, I like that.
So,
I like that.
Yeah, I wasn't even planning for that, but we'll toss it in there somewhere.
Nice.
Before we go any further into this pod, I just want to remind everybody that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games, which we're recording Thursday night. If you wanted to bet on a live game Sunday after hearing this podcast, you can do it over there. If you want to bet on even something like baseball, you can do it over there, as I'm currently watching Jose Quintana warm up on the mound for Game 4. But if you think you know your stuff, you can get in on their $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head over to the online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or in one with over 150 slot games. Head over to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online, the game starts here. And for those listening on our YouTube, you can find the full version of this podcast behind our $9 Patreon tier, where you get access to a bunch of different things from the Strickland, like our Discord, an extra pod from Shwinny Poo, as you guys all know. You get the Strickland Roll, a bunch of other great stuff. You get percentage off on merch and all that. So great values over there.
Yeah, if you guys join the Discord, you get to hear me talk about my Thaddeus Young card collection. It's it's a worthy investment.
Yep. And they could potentially see your bobblehead collection.
Oh yeah. Shout out Foco for hooking me up last season.
Yep. So I think the right place to start is the trades that have gone down, and you could, toss it right into Ant's wheelhouse right away with Cooper to the Bills. What do you make of that?
Man, it kind of caught me by surprise a little bit, and through my whole week, like out of whack. Like the Bills playing on Monday, like threw off my normal timeline, and so I was trying to get through the Bills tape from the night before, and then the Cooper trade happened, so then I had to like sidetrack a bunch of the regular tape to watch all of Amari Cooper's games from this year, and then some of his 2023 stuff, and it's a good move for the Bills, just off a base level. It's an immediate upgrade to their wide receiver room. I don't think I saw a lot of people throwing out like the highlight reels from 2023, and it was like, oh my God, the Bills got Amari Cooper. This is great. And they're showing what he's doing against the Niners last year and the Steelers and kind of just balling out. I didn't think he was that same kind of guy this year on tape. He looks a bit slower. I don't know if he lost a step or if he's like heavier or he's got some kind of injury, or he just hated life in Cleveland and wasn't giving it like 110%. And that kind of really hasn't been his MO. Like, he's always a grinder. So I don't know what it was, but he didn't look to have the juice this year that he did last year. But he's still a tremendous route runner, really good with deception in his stems and suddenness in his breaks. He immediately becomes wide receiver 1 on this Bills team. And it's something they really need. Like, they've struggled to have in structure passing success for like them this year. Everything has been either the run game or Allen making something happen off a scramble and chucking it downfield and making a play. It's been off script, out of structure stuff. They need to win more within structure, and hopefully he can be that guy for him.
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw some clips from Cooper, and as a kind of like a far observer of the Browns and kind of what's been going on over there, it's easy to forget how good he is, because he puts up in a given week now, 3 catches for 35 yards or something like that.
Yeah, if that.
And then you see the plays, and it's like, this guy should not be putting up 35 yards, right? This is somebody who's separating on legit cornerback ones every game. And even when we played them this year, we played the Browns, and he had really one amazing catch and one route where he just kind of routed up Deontay Banks. So I think there's a lot left in the tank there, honestly. And I wonder if this trade would have been made if they had a little bit of a better feeling about Keon Coleman's start to the season.
I think that's a fair question. That's a fair question. Yeah, like,
and that's one thing that, like, as a separator, people talk about him coming to the Bills. He's a separator. That's why I didn't love the pick for them when they took Keon Coleman, because jump ball demon, outstanding physical tools, all that stuff. But he still didn't separate, from the time when he was at Michigan State. It was a little bit better than when he went to FSU, but that was never his MO. And that was a little concerning, but now I think you drop him down the docket to wide receiver 3, after being put behind Cooper and Shakir, and even Kincaid to a certain extent. I think not only do you help the overall quality of the passing game, but you also maybe help his development a little bit down the line.
Yeah, I think you can make that case, especially too if you get the whole rub of how good of a route runner and professional Amari Cooper is. Maybe he teaches Coleman something. It's kind of like how the Bills edge grouping got a little boost when Von Miller came in. Not just because you get Von Miller, but he's teaching everybody like in-house the pass rush summit stuff and like the cerebral mentality you need to have when you're rushing the quarterback. And yeah, Coleman can definitely use that stuff. You hit on it. The traits are there, the size, the frame, the athleticism. I know he ran like a slow 40 and everybody's like, oh, that means he's not athletic. Dude is super athletic. Like, he's out there shaking guys. He's hurdling dudes on tape. But the way he separates, quote unquote, was, hey, let me make a contested catch. Let me, he basically plays the best comparison I heard for him was Nate Tice the night he got drafted. And he said, like, Keon Coleman plays wide receiver like Sean Kemp played power forward. And I was like, that's spot on. Like, he's just power dunker, posting up like athleticism for days. And you're not seeing that, okay, let me route somebody up. Let me separate on my release or at the break or in the stem. And that can come eventually, but it's not there right now. And getting somebody like Cooper, as you alluded to, it knocks everybody down a peg in a good way. Like, Shakir gets to take a step down. Coleman gets to take a step down. Hollins gets to take a step down. Curtis Samuel, his toe is still banged up. Maybe he gets to, take his foot off the gas a little bit, no pun intended, or they like let him heal up or let him be the vertical spot. It helps things for Kincaid. It should help things for the run game. I think it's one of those things like kind of like a rising tide lifts all boats type of deal. And then in addition to what he brings in a vacuum, but yeah, I think it kind of keeps Coleman on that trajectory, lets him simmer and cook a little bit more as he starts to develop and grow into more of the wide receiver 2 or hopefully wide receiver 1 that they need him and want him to be down the road.
Mm-hmm. Looking at kind of like the macro market of these higher end receivers who've gotten dealt, right? So you guys yourselves got a 2 back for Stephon Diggs to the Texans. Then obviously Devontae gets traded for a conditional 3rd that could become a 2. And you kind of essentially have traded now Diggs and a 3 for Cooper and a 2. And I think that in the macro sense, I think that's a win because, Allen's expensive, right? Like, you guys are going to have to pay Rousseau. You're going to have to pay, I don't know if you're necessarily going to have to pay Milano because you got guys there kind of waiting in the wings to take over.
Yeah, we'll see with that.
There are guys who have to get their payday soon, right? And I think if you're looking at it from the Bills' perspective, like, that 32 pick jump is probably worth losing whatever difference there was from Diggs to Cooper. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's how they thought about this trade.
Yeah, I think if you kind of pair that together and look at it, that's a fair thought to have. I think, looking at Diggs' skill set, it fits so well in this offense when things were really clicking because he was like the Allen type of target. Early separator, declarative winner, could win at multiple points. The release, the stem, the break, he could run any route that you wanted, still had the ability to get vertical and make plays, and still was very much that guy down the stretch. I know everybody, including a lot of Bills fans, love to just use the drop against KC in the division round and be like, see, he was washed. No. Like, he's out there cooking L'Jarius Sneed and Jalen Ramsey, like, the lead down the stretch. And he was open deep a ton throughout the year. And Allen either overthrew him or underthrew him a ton. Diggs is still a really quality receiver. And I think Cooper is they're I think, similarly in that tier, the type of players that they are. Cooper's bigger, thicker, more physical, like 6'1", 211 versus Diggs being roughly the same height, but like 20 pounds less.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He's like 191, so he's a smaller dude. And so different skill sets with the frame attached, but still route running is that top tier aspect. And if it's, when Cooper's on, I mean, the past couple of years, even going back to his time in Dallas, he crushed it. But even last year, playing with it's still nuts that Joe Flacco balled out last year. But even just playing last year with Joe Flacco, amongst 88 players with 70 targets last year, Cooper was 8th in first down percentage, 9th in yards per target, 1st in average depth of catch, 25th in EPA per target, 18th in overall EPA, and then 50th in positive play percentage, which is tied to the offense a little bit. But yeah, if you maybe look at it as like, okay, we get a guy who's maybe a tier down from Diggs, or maybe Diggs is starting to creep down into that tier with Cooper a little bit, depending on how you view him, and you get a higher draft pick in totality, I think it's fair to kind of look at it as a wash or a potential win. Especially, again, a lot of it's going to depend on how Cooper plays and how quickly he can assimilate into the offense, which also plays into it of, the direction Joe Brady wanted to take the Bills offense. Maybe Stephon Diggs, as good as he is and still is, wasn't necessarily kind of a like-for-like fit and was more of a square peg in a round hole type of deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that when I've watched the Bills kind of like quick and intermediate game, I think a lot of it has, correct me if I'm wrong, bro, as well. I think a lot of it has been finding soft spots in zone. And Cooper, like you said, beats man coverage. And while that might be more downfield, it just is going to add versatility no matter what aspect you talk about it in. And so that juice is going to be worth the squeeze, in my opinion. Dez, when we kind of look at Devontae and the price that he costed the Jets, and then we look at the price that Cooper costed for the Bills, what do you make of that? And then after we hit on that kind of like the difference in value, why don't we go into some Jets and how that trade affects them?
I mean, it's kind of tough because from what I heard, especially with the Jets and the Raiders for the Devontae trade, the Raiders really kind of squeezed everything they could to get a set or the conditional second or whatever for Devontae, because they knew the Jets were that fucking desperate because they think that, Devontae is going to solve all their issues. And I mean, maybe he does, but I think it goes a lot deeper than needing another wide receiver. I think that team has a lot of pretty serious issues both on and off the field. But I in terms of like, honestly, just what team I like the trade more for, I like get Cooper for the Bills way more. I think he brings maybe not a lot more than Devontae, but the Bills genuinely needed a wide receiver. Like, I won't say badly, but they needed someone a little more. I don't want to. I'm trying to think of a word to use that's not just better,
like,
but they needed
pedigree.
With pedigree, exactly. To where the Jets, again, they don't really need a Devontae type player to fix their team. So, I mean, given again just what the Raiders had to do to get that out of the Jets, I don't know. I really do like this way more for the Bills.
Yeah, that's fair. When I guess we could kind of let the Saleh fire into this conversation also.
Yeah.
But when they played you guys last weekend, I thought that honestly was kind of like the best or most creative game plan, I should say, rather than best that they've had this season, honestly, from play design standpoint and kind of like the way that the routes were meshing downfield and the concepts they were calling. I thought a lot of it was much more forward thinking than when Saleh was at the helm. And I don't know if you follow our beat that's around here, but they were talking about how for a little while there was some dissent growing between coaches and whatnot, and like a little bit of game plan arguing. So I think that if I'm looking ahead, being that the Bills have a game in hand at Buffalo against them, and they have a 2-game lead now, right, in the win-loss column, I still think the odds are that they are going to win the division. They're going to get the higher seed. They're going to get home field advantage in the playoffs. If I was to ask myself who I think got better, I just don't know how you like you see the chemistry and kind of like the mind melding that Rodgers has with Lazard. He's going to have that with Devontae also having that same ability, and Garrett Wilson. And I assume it'll open up the run game that I thought was going to be fantastic for them, but hasn't kind of lived up to that hype. So preliminary opinion, I think the Jets got a decent bit better than the Bills did. I still think the Bills, taking advantage of these 6 weeks, have built up way more cushion and way more advantage for that potential postseason game. So ball's in their court. Postseason, though, it's tough to not take a team that I think is potentially more talented overall with a quarterback who's been through the ringer and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think, just from a pure, like, forget about the deal, just talking about like the players and how the roster changed. Yeah, I think the Jets got better than the Bills did just because I think Devontae Adams is a better wide receiver than Amari Cooper. And I know people kind of like, oh, it's his hamstring is a little gimpy and, miles on the tires and that. I still think Devontae Adams is fantastic. And then his rapport and chemistry with Aaron Rodgers, we'll see. Again, I know Aaron Rodgers now isn't the Aaron Rodgers that he was in Green Bay when he was working with Devontae and, just crushing everything week after week. And vulturing all those touchdowns for me when I had Aaron Jones on my fantasy team. Every week, man, he would get it down to the 1 yard line and they'd be like, no, just like a quick little fade to Devontae for the touchdown. I'd be like, you can't just let Aaron, and then they'd be like, no, we're going to run in with AJ Dillon. And I'd be like, oh, it killed me so many times back then when I had Aaron Jones like 4 years in a row.
Or they would run that kind of like pseudo pick play, and Devontae would get the 1 yard walk-in touchdown. Yeah.
Every time. And I was just like, you get down to the one and you think like, okay, run time. It's like, no, they're going to call something for Devontae and he's going to get a one. Like the goal line offense is Devontae Adams. And it worked. Yeah. So again, who am I going to complain?
Maybe that's why they traded for him too, because they've sucked on the goal line this year.
It's just been rough for them overall. And I like some of the things they did in Monday night against the Bills, including like one play, they ran like a 4-strong formation, shifted. I forget who they shifted across the formation, and Brees was in the backfield, but a little switch release, and Brees ends up running a seam route up the middle, and Rodgers hits Brees, and it was a nice throw and nice play, and the weapons are extremely enticing. Like Garrett Wilson was my wide receiver 1 that year that he came out. I think he can be legitimately one of the best receivers in football, like from a production standpoint, but from a skill set standpoint, I already think he's tremendous. And now you add Devontae, which again, you got to see how everything fits, but knowing the offense they run, knowing his rapport and chemistry with Rodgers, man, that's a crazy 1-2 in Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. And they do need to stabilize some things a little bit, especially on the offensive line. Like they got better versus previous years and they're not banged up, but you've still got some kind of cohesion issues and the run game hasn't built what you wanted. And which again, seems kind of tough with the additions to the line. And then you have Brees Hall, who I also think is tremendously talented. So you've got this like 3-headed weapons monster of Devontae and Garrett Wilson and then friggin' Brees Hall. And the defense is really good. Yeah, I'm interested to kind of see what they can become. And again, I thought they looked better, like you said, against the Bills, although some of it was muddy. They missed multiple field goals, but then they had the touchdown on the stupid Hail Mary that was random. And then they get 3 points on a drive where Rodgers got sacked, but AJ Epinesa gets called for roughing the passer because of like an added act or whatever, because he was trying to rip the ball out, which was stupid. Even Rodgers acknowledged that. So it's a little muddy, but I thought they looked better with Downing at the helm versus Hackett. And we'll kind of see what they look like going forward, injecting Devontae in there. He's such a high level type of player. And that offense just needs to be halfway decent. The defense is super good. You just need the offense to not be awful. Like this offense for the Jets doesn't have to be like top 5 or top 3. Just be like 15 to 11. That's it. Like just be somewhere in that range. Yeah. And when you pair that with the defense, that should be good enough to get you at least to the playoffs. And then if you get in the playoffs, who the hell knows? Because defense travels and you got dudes who have been there before, like you said.
I'm glad you brought up the roughing the passers, because I absolutely hate like the fan who is always tweeting like, this ref sucks, that ref sucks, yada yada. That was the only game, and I watched like 7 or 8 games this weekend. That was the one game where I was like, dude, this is like stopping them from playing actual football.
Dude, the last drive, like the one when the Jets had the ball for the last time, the drive that ended in the Taron Johnson interception, I forgot how many like flags there were. There was like 7 or 8 like flags that were thrown on that drive alone.
Yeah.
It was wild. It just kept getting in the way of the play, and some of the calls were sketchy. Like that roughing the passer call on Epinesa was terrible. They called holding on Joe Tippmann on that one little dump off to Brees that he kind of held, but the ref also threw it like 5 seconds after the actual hold, which seemed kind of weird. Yeah, I'm not that guy either. I'm not like, these refs suck and they're costing so-and-so the game and this is terrible. But it was bad towards the end. Like I felt like I was watching a basketball game where we're in the first quarter and like there's like 5 dudes on each side that each have like 2 or 3 fouls. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like this sucks. Like I don't want to see that.